I've coincided this video to be uploaded on the 7th anniversary of me uploading my first video to this channel. For a few months after I uploaded it, that first video was actually the longest on my channel by quite some margin, because back then I didn't waste 250 words of my script getting to the point. With an introduction you need to put your best foot forward, and for me I guess what that meant was Windows Movie Maker and recording my narration one sentence at a time. But thankfully, most anime seem to have better ideas than I do when making their debuts. At the beginning of a season, people will be ranting and raving about the new killer first episode that's just come out, often saying that first episode felt like a movie. But sometimes they mean it literally. Your average anime episode is about 20 minutes long, because let's be real, if you cost almost 200,000 USD per episode to produce, I'd also keep things on the short side. But once in a blue moon, we will get an episode that decides, you know what, to really whet the audience's appetite, let's make this first episode the length of an average national rail delay. So today I'm going to look at 3 different long first episodes, because long first episodes are here to stay. Unless Demon Slayer Season 4 Episode 1 didn't recoup its budget, in which case this video is going to seem very laughable. Because I want to get a bit of balance, I'm going to start this video by talking about an example of a long episode that I feel both works and doesn't work, namely ReZero. There are 2 different ways of watching ReZero Season 1, either the broadcast version or the director's cut. In the latter, all the episodes are 50 minutes or longer and have been made by splicing 2 episodes together. The broadcast version just had them all go as the regular 23-ish minutes that most other anime episodes are. But in both versions, the first episode is 50 minutes long. In the context of the director's cut, this decision works perfectly since every episode is already that length. But if we suddenly got isekai'd into a world where the director's cut never existed, then one question would arise. Should they have made the first episode so long? The first answer to this question will depend on only about 5 minutes of this 50-minute show, and that's the moment Subaru returns by death and the moment Subaru calls Emilia Satella. And which of those 2 you felt was the better ending to a first episode? In the shorter episode camp, you could argue that the reveal of Return by Death is a powerful bombshell on which to end that first episode. It's quite jarring watching Subaru go from getting his innards remodeled to standing back in front of the Apple salesman within just a minute, and that's a lasting image. Compare this to the end of the second half, which is the exact same thing happening, and then Subaru meeting Emilia, then calling her the wrong name, which isn't quite as dramatic, especially because we don't have much idea about Emilia or the implications of Satella at this point. If Subaru embarrassing Emilia is grounds to end an episode, then ReZero Season 1 would have been like 60 episodes long. In addition to this, the episode ends halfway through an arc, so it's not like this first episode is a self-contained story, so could have easily just been made into 2 regular episodes. Though the arguments against Velvet divorcing this respective Czechoslovakia is the escalation and consistency argument. Escalation because we go from Subaru knowing bugger all about the person who gave him shanks for the memories, to retracing his steps, trying to negotiate with Rom Felt, only for him to come face to face with the person who stabbed him the last time. The only Elsa this proficient in impaling since the Filthy Frank cover of Let It Go. Then you've also got to factor in that ReZero's first episode, in its 50-minute form, is a lot more true to the rest of the show than if it were just the first part, because Season 1 of ReZero spends most of its time just like the second half of this episode, using his memories of previous runs in order to achieve a better end, and that's where most of the intrigue comes from, since the audience are also trying to solve the mystery at the same time Subaru is as well. Well, whatever side you find yourself on, ultimately it doesn't matter, since this episode aired over 2 Olympiads ago, so no one's too fussed that became a long episode. So let's move on to a longer episode that people were actually talking about. Yep, this is the reason I made the video. Oshi No Ko's first episode was a straight-up event that eclipsed the 10 episodes that came after it. Though, ironically, the episode itself is eclipsed by its last 5 minutes. Not many people talk about the preceding hour and a quarter, but I think I might as well. There's 2 ways to make a long first episode work. Either set up everything, or have it feel like its own self-contained arc that ends come the credits. Oshi No Ko's problem comes from the fact its first episode tries to have both cakes and eat them, and as a result ends up with terrible indigestion. Though that's not to say it didn't make 2 cakes that were kind of tasty. Sometimes. If you want to make the argument that this was mainly a self-contained arc, then yes, look no further than I. This hour-and-a-half episode encompasses her entire character from rise to fall, and looking back on it, was actually pretty amazingly executed. For the majority of the runtime, all we see of Ai is her on-screen, or the very little that she lets slips about her real personality, before gradually letting her children see more of her. She's made a living basically lying to an audience, and so she became convinced that every word out of her mouth was a calculating lie. And yet with her children, she finds something that she can truthfully say that she loves, and that's what makes her death feel like such a shock. Then you remember that I is just one plot line, and the rest of this episode is quite clunkily setting up about a dozen different plot points. Some of these threads are very poignant, like the Ruby subplot, and some lead to greater payoff, like the introduction of Arimakana. However, the vast majority of these arcs feel like they're being hastily set up at the expense of the arc that's already happening. The dialogue doesn't help this either, because some of it is insightful, but quite a lot of it feels like an Almost Sunny in Philadelphia joke.
もし芸能人の子供に生まれていたらって考えたことはない？
So since I'm making a video essay in the year of our Lord 2024, I've now contractually got to mention Vinland Saga. But I'm not going to talk about how Vinland Saga Season 2 is what fixed my marriage or some bullshit. Instead, I want to talk about the first 3 episodes of that season and compare it to Oshi No Ko, so spoilers for that as well. You can probably tell where this is going if you've seen both shows, but effectively the first 3 episodes of Vinland Saga mirror the plot points of Oshi No Ko's first episode. Cocky blonde kid wants to follow in their famous parents' footsteps, backfires as they see the reality of the world they live in, watch his parent get killed in front of them, one time skip later and they think they're Batman. However, Vinland has this happen over 3 episodes, whereas Oshi No Ko has it done in just the one long episode. Though, in my opinion, it should have also been 3 episodes. You can't make the argument that it's a network constraint that make this a longer first episode, because Doga Kobo only did 10 other episodes after, instead of 12 to 13, so easily you could have spaced them out and it would have still been a 13 episode series. Vinland Saga's first 3 episodes are divided quite nicely as well. The first episode focusing on Thor's, the second focusing on the wider world, and the third one focusing on Thorfinn's harsh awakening to the cruelty of the world, with the arc of Thor's legacy weaving its way into each episode and coming to a nice stopping point in episode 3. And I feel something like this could have happened with Oshi No Ko as well. Have the first episode focus on Ai from the lens of the 2 people who watched her from a hospital bed, end it with the birth of the twins. Have the second episode focus on their reincarnation and their new lives, even ending it with the wonderful kindergarten dance scene, which is probably my favourite bit of the episode. And then have the third focus on the entertainment industry, meanwhile building up a more vivid picture of Ai as she gets more famous as it goes along, and then end it with the absolute bombshell that is her death. It might not have grabbed as many headlines, but I feel this would have been a much more focused way of starting the series than a long episode. I don't know how to move on from the Oshi No Ko section of this vid, so incest, am I right? But it's technically my channel's birthday today, so I want to be positive. Let's end this one on a high note, and you won't get me hitting higher notes than when I'm talking about the Tatami Galaxy, or in this case, the Tatami Time Machine Blues. You might be wondering what I'm on about, because not many people watched this anime when it came out in 2022, and amongst that number was myself. But I wasn't watching it because I was holding out for the book to get translated, and now that I've read the book, I caught up with this 6-episode temporal fuckaboutery just last week, and let me say, I was soy-jacking so hard while watching it. The Tatami Galaxy is one of my favourite anime of all time, and the Tatami Time Machine Blues is more Tatami Galaxy, though only 6 episodes worth of Tatami hijinks, and most of these episodes are only 17 minutes in length. As you probably figured out, I said most of because the first episode is oh, okay, it's only 38 minutes, which isn't much compared to the previous 2 I just mentioned, so it's more, sizable. But that still makes it double the length of the majority of episodes of this show. So I'm putting it in this video because it does what the other 2 episodes I've mentioned today didn't, and it puts all of its runtime to good use. Now to do this, I'm not just going to spoil the first episode, I'm going to spoil the entirety of the Tatami Time Machine Blues, though you could probably have read the novella and watched the series in the time it takes for me to think up something better to end this sentence with. So go do that now. Big spoiler off the bat, this show is about the main character from the Tatami Galaxy discovering a time machine. Call that the Spanish Inquisition, because I sure wasn't expecting that. But this is a small-scale time travel story, as the majority of it is just the main characters going back to the day before they start time traveling. And I'm now going to refer to them as the Tatami crew just to make this sound like the most scuffed COD Zombies timeline. The first episode has the important task of introducing the cast and the world. Now it helps that the Tatami crew are archetypal characters and you could really get the gist of them just by watching for a few seconds. But this show eases you back into them by showing a full day in the protagonist's protagonist's wasted summer. These slice-of-life antics seem lackadaisical and casual at first, but serve a deeper purpose, because the next 4 episodes are going to be the Tatami crew exploring these exact events, so every last detail comes back into play whether you noticed it or not. Within these 38 minutes, you get enough Chekhov guns to make the bullet train writers horny, and then it ends everything with the big oh shit moment, the introduction of the time machine. If you had made these into 2 different episodes with the regular 17-minute long runtime, each would have risked being inconsequential, and the first episode wouldn't have really ended on anything quite as dramatic as the other 6. But as one cohesive whole, it's formatted in a way to get the audience both comfortable yet excited, though the cohesion of this episode is something that goes a layer deeper if you've read the book. Yes, I'm going to gloat about reading the book now, I feel clever. The book is split up into chapters, which have been given the self-explanatory names of August 12th, August 11th, and August 12th again. Once you've watched the anime, you realise that the first chapter is episode 1, the second chapter is episodes 2 through 4, and the final chapter is episode 5. Then episode 6 is chapter 1 again. How come this odd configuration? Well, it's because a lot of the background information in the first chapter of the book regarding the history of this timeline's version of the film circle has been cut out of the first episode and then put right on the end. Why? It was inconsequential to the wider narrative, so couldn't have gone in something as purposeful as episode 1. Then, by putting this subplot at the end, it serves as a soft prequel to the show as the last episode. The official term for this, by the way, is pulling a golden wind, allowing these events the room to breathe since they aren't stalling the rest of the plot, and the episode plays out almost like its own mini Tatami Galaxy episode. It feels a little peripheral, but it's a nice bookend to the series, which is ironic seeing as the bookend is the book's beginning. I'll wrap it up there, because once I get started about anything Tatami Galaxy related, I literally cannot stop. But in brief, the Tatami Time Machine Blues is the masterclass on how to do a long-ish first episode, as it realizes that what you don't put in the episode is just as important as what you do. And I'm also going to recommend the series even just outside this aspect, because the Tatami Time Machine Blues is great. It's also quite relatable, because if I had a time machine, I'd also only use it to go back a few days. Then I might have gotten this video out on time. This comes out on the 14th, you know what happened.